Okay.
Are we all situated?
I think so. I can't find my phone. So I don't lose my keys.
That's what I thought. Okay, now, meeting's gonna come to order. First thing, we'll have to call to order at 6 o'clock, which is what we did. We'll have roll call.
Ms. Howe? Ms. Butler-Challenger here. Mr. Wiswasser?
Here.
Mr. Almarigi?
Here.
Mr. Benzi? Here. Mr. Fuensplez?
Here.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, item 2, for those who have your agenda, it is civil reflection. We'll have the pledge of allegiance, and then after that, we'll have a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, we have approval of the agenda, item 3.
Everybody happy with it?
Yeah, that's right, that's what I'm looking for, approval of the agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
Second?
Mr. Fuensplez?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler-Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Wiswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there any disclosure conflict? Item 4. Doesn't appear to be. All right, we have public statement number 1, which is item 5, and this is limited only to what's on the agenda. Do we have anybody? Okay, it appears we don't. Is there anyone I don't see from the county, state, federal, or other agencies? We'll go on to item 7, which is the consent agenda.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler-Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Wiswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Fuensplez?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 8, we have approval of minutes. Minutes from the Board of Trustees, which is May 16 of 2022. And we take them together, which I assume we would. Minutes of the Board special meeting, May 25th, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the regular Board of Trustee meetings for May 16th, 2022, and a special Board of Trustee meeting for May 25th, 2022.
I'll second.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Fields Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Thank you.
We have approval of the voucher, item 9.
I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers as presented.
Second.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Fields Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes.
All right, item 10, which is the treasury report, says no attachment.
There's no report, I was gone, as you all know, last week. I'm back this week, I'll have something for you next week. The only thing I can tell you is the audit is done, it's ready, they want to come tonight, however, it wasn't on the agenda. So they're looking at the next meeting, which I believe, Karen, is the 21st.
Okay, so the auditors will be here June 21st meeting.
Correct.
Okay, committee appointments, and I have them. We have a recommendation for the Park Lake, which is 3 years, so their term is December 31, 24. You have a motion for,
I'll make a motion to reappoint Dan Hayes and John Griffin to the Public Advisory Board.
Second?
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Fields Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
yes. All right, we have a new appointment to the Housing Commission. It's a 5-year commitment. Mr. Race, or actually goes by Ray O'Connell, and his term begins December 31st of 2026.
Move approval of the appointment of Race O'Connell for the term ending December 31st, 2026 to the Housing Commission.
Second.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Fields Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the third item on your list would be the new alternate member for the Board of Review. This is a 2-year commitment, and we have 2 applicants, so you'll have to choose which applicant that you're wanting to do that with, or not.
Move approval or appointment, of Miss Tamika Ruth Riley with the term ending December 31st, 2024 to the Board of Review.
Second.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Fields Bliss?
Yes.
Thank you.
That takes care of the Township Committee. Nope, you have your appointments. So now looking at item 12, Township Committee report, there doesn't seem to be one. So we'll go to item 13, which is unfinished business. Items of introduction, Clinton County Broadband Initiative. Superintendent.
Thank you.
You're on.
This is a meeting that 3 of us attended from the township. Supervisor Howe, Clerk Brenda Butler Challenger, and myself all attended this meeting, which included an overview of the broadband initiative from Clinton County by Adam, and I hope I'm saying it correctly, Smitty of Guidehouse. As the previous report and the report that's included in here, we have been included in a service area east, which consists of Victor Charter Township and, Victor Township and Ovid Township, not Charter Township, excuse me. And we're estimated in this service area that there are 3,500 homes that are without any fiber service, and there are 513 homes that are without any service at all. Just for a point of reference for you, in the northern portion of Bath Township, there are 687 residential, I would say parcels. There's 3,326 total in the township and 28 agricultural, which there are 39 total in the township. While bringing reliable service, I think, is a goal of all of us, and I don't mean to speak for all of us, but I think that is the ultimate goal. The county is focusing on the northern portion of our township. So Clinton County and Guidehouse have requested an amount, a financial amount of our American Rescue Plan Act funds that we are willing to commit, and they're asking the same of all the municipalities in Clinton County to commit to this effort. And I did make a mistake in this. I said that June 21st was the day after every regular board meeting, but it would actually be the 22nd because of the Juneteenth holiday. So Adam Smitty has graciously said that they could wait until we had both of our meetings in June before they would expect a decision to be made from us as to whether we were going to put in the letter of intent and just how much we were willing to spend of our ARPA dollars towards this effort. I listed again for your information the amount of ARPA dollars that, as of Treasury estimates as of June 2021, that would be distributed, and I know that has been adjusted because several non-entitlement units didn't take money, and that money is being redistributed to those of us units that did take money. So I believe that we've received a little bit more than what is here on the page for us. The county strategy, and please help me ladies if I have this incorrect, appears to be to obtain cooperative funding from each of the service areas, and then they would look for additional grant funding with potential assistance of private sector partners. There are several in the packet on page I believe there was only one partner from businesses at that meeting, but there are several listed as part of the strategy. On page 13, ISP engagement, that are willing to partner with locals to try to obtain grant funding. Funding is not guaranteed. Each service area would be competing for the same pool of funds. That is my understanding. That's my words. And there are multiple grants available in multiple grant cycles. So Guidehouse did indicate that service areas can apply for multiple grants at the same time. So what we need to determine by our next meeting would be whether Bath would like to proceed with participating in the Clinton County Broadband Initiative. If we are to participate, how much of that, of our ARPA funding are we willing to commit to that initiative? And then the final element, which is something that Guidehouse had asked for, is whether we would transfer our ARPA dollars directly to Clinton County, or would the township make direct payments of that money? So there's several items there that we need to take stock of and have some discussions around and determine whether we want to be in this process or out of this process. So, and I welcome any and all conversation. I know there's a local perspective as well from our work here. So it's not my job to open the floor, but I would say, please.
I'll open the floor.
Thank you.
With our perspective of what it is. Do we know at this point, because they've been working on this for months and months and months, do we know at this time that our local, I think that sounds terrible, our local committee, not our local, but our local committee?
So we're waiting to hear back from public sector consultants to set up the meeting. Right now, I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of the committee. The committee has not met in some time as we're waiting for the survey results back. Karen and I met and talked about this quite extensively after I was not able to attend this particular meeting, but we'd like to reconvene that committee to help us think through this. So the benefits is of this, from my perspective, not speaking from the perspective of the committee, is that two things. One is there's a little bit more, there's quite a bit more leverage when you partner with the county and go in on a combined application, because there's scales. The larger the scale, the more competitive you are, as opposed to one-off little projects. Another benefit is that this commitment is non-binding. I'm not sure if that was mentioned. And so, meaning the letter of commitment and the amount is non-binding. And so, and it's also contingent upon getting grant funds. So, but on the downside, there's a whole lot of lack of clarity as to exactly what the strategy is and what those monies will be used for. And so, I mean, I would like to schedule a time to have a more direct conversation with representatives from Guidehouse and the county to talk more about what that may look like. That's my personal take on this before we make a commitment. Also, I know we're trying to schedule a meeting with Victor Township to talk about where they're at with this. And so Miles, myself, and Karen had a conversation, meeting with Victor and Stellar Broadband to just talk about some of the ideas that Stellar has, just as a learning more type of meeting. And so I believe Victor and Beth are in fairly good alignment with wanting to do best by on behalf of our citizenry. The question is, and what I'd like to know more is, what proportion are other townships willing to, or thinking about committing to this initiative? What proportion of ARPA funds are other townships thinking about committing to this? I have no idea. So,
Some of them that were there would commit everything, the whole ARPA fund. That was not a question for them. I'm interested in Stellar. Is that another?
So if in the report, there's, you'll see a list of ISPs or internet service providers that have engaged and are interested in partnering. So Stellar is one of, I think, 25. Now, I believe he's the president, Richard Lane from Stellar, has been very active supporting both Bath and Victor in our broadband committees and efforts. And so he's been a good partner in terms of helping us understand these issues from an internet service provider perspective. But beyond that, there's not been any commitment, or again, it's just been learning more about what's.
So the $20,000 for public sector that we already spent was solely for
The survey.
survey.
Yep.
Okay.
So one of the conversations I think we wanted to have with public sector consultants was, from their perspective, now that we have our survey results, now that there's this complicated set of partnerships that the county wants to establish, can they offer some guidance where we may not have the expertise? And so that, I'd like to have that conversation with them to see if that's a space that they have expertise in. And then if so, then that would be a conversation we bring back to this board about whether or not we want to continue that relationship.
So all that needs to be done in 2 weeks. That's, yeah.
So I mean, what I've learned over the past year is that this work moves very slowly. And while we may be asked to sign a non-binding letter of commitment in the next 2 weeks, it may be a year, maybe 2 years before there's movement. More than likely, there may be some applications later on this summer that the county will submit through their collaboration with Guidehouse. And so I wouldn't want to preclude that. So beyond that, I mean, my recommendation is, yes, of course, we sign a letter of commitment. What I can't make a recommendation on is how much of our ARPA funds would be a worthy investment.
I'm sorry, we were having this discussion.
I just raised my hand, that's okay, thanks. Is there a reason they're only asking for ARPA funds?
Lowest hanging fruit on the tree. It's funds that has come from, I don't know if there's more technical reasons why, but most of our townships in the county have received ARPA funds. Broadband is a legitimate use for ARPA funds. I doubt that the county would, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the county would balk if we used a different source of funds from ARPA funds.
All right, thanks.
Do you know what we're spending our ARPA funds on?
There have been no discussions by this board today as to commitments for ARPA funds.
Or no idea where they would go? Okay.
Quick question, since this is a non-binding letter of intent, does that mean that it goes as well as for the grant? In other words, if we take and put our money, our ARPA funds towards this, a percentage of them, how much it is, whatever it is, does that mean that we commit to that and the grants don't go through, that we've essentially lost our percentage of that money? That we have, I guess that's the question for Karen more than it is for your uses.
I think it was my understanding that if the grants were to not go through, that money would be returned to us. And I
think that's what he said.
if that's the same understanding.
But you're gonna take the risk, you're gonna put that $1,300,000 out there in comparison to what some of these other communities are gonna have, 300,000-400,000, maybe have 233 for one. And obviously the lion's share of our funds will be utilized for startup money for this venture for the district. Am I correct, Jason?
I can't speak to that latter question. What I will say is that they do ask in that letter of intent which of two mechanisms we wanted to use. One is to ship the money to the county for them to hold, or we hold the money and then pay directly to vendors, whether those are internet service providers or vendors that may do infrastructure assessments. I mean, reading this board, I would think that we would choose the latter, but.
They got, I wish the county commissioners was here today, but they got $14 million in ARPA funds, if I'm not mistaken, and their share of their ARPA money. The county, speaking of the county, I know for a fact that they bought a new $150,000 letter folding machine the other day with some of their money. I'm a little concerned about what we're gonna spend our 1.3 with. We haven't even got our 1.3 yet, incidentally. You've only got $684,000 right at the moment, but I mean, it's there. But I mean, you're gonna get your rest of your money. There's no doubt about that. And the term non-binding letter of intent scares me a little bit, but you opened the door to that and mentioned that was the case.
Yeah, so if the language of the letter is not well written, so it's not written by a lawyer. So they're very clear that it's a non-binding letter of commitment, and two, it's use of the money is contingent upon grant funding. So if we don't get grant funding, we're not going to spend it. So I have no issue with that. In fact, we could have our township attorney draft what our letter of commitment would be. We don't have to use their suggested letter, and so we can be much more clear about our exit ramps from the commitment.
It would be nice to, the broadband's great, be great sponsor of money for us, if I forget. I would want to know, because you also said that we were, I believe maybe Karen said that we were, districts compete against each other. So in other words, there's other townships, cities, villages that are competing against each other. So for grant monies?
We're all competing for the same.
Same as food, we're all competing for the same dollar amount.
I wouldn't characterize it as that. I think it's a little bit more complex. And so depending on the source of funding, most likely these will be federal infrastructure funds. But the grant opportunity, if Clinton County could submit a grant with a three-part proposal, meaning that it's a single grant application, saying that they've split the county into three areas of highest need, and then that would be the basis. In that scenario, we would not be competing with any other township or municipality in the county. We'd be competing against other counties that may be submitting, or other regional entities. Or if DeWitt went and submitted to the same grant funding source on their own, the county would be competing against them. I think what we don't want is Bath Township going alone and competing against the county on this. Now,
It'd be nice to know how we're all gonna be scored, and how they're gonna score this, because this is, if I'm not mistaken, Brian, you've done this before. Are we gonna be scored, are we gonna be scored on this as far as on a grant basis? What our weaknesses and strengths are in each district, I would guess.
do you want
And I can't speak to this grant proposal, but typically the grants see the project as a whole, and you review it as a whole.
Go ahead, yeah, go
The only
ahead.
thing I was going to say is I'm going to take exception to the holding of the fund. That's exactly right. Grants will look at what you have. So if the letter of intent is not permanent, you have an option to be able to back out of that. All that does is show Clinton County, when they go for grants, this is X amount of dollars that we have. So the holding of the dollars is kind of a questionable thing, because they're looking, if you're gonna go with them, you've gotta go with them all the way, not just 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
So
That's the.
let me rephrase this. So
Okay.
these letters of intent are going to be used for grant applications.
That's correct.
And so what the reviewers of the grant applications are gonna wanna see is there real commitment by the constituent townships and communities to this effort? If we go and say, we have $1.4 million, but we're gonna commit $3,000 of that money to broadband, that's not gonna look great to a reviewer for that grant application. If we go all in $1.4 million, that's a strong commitment. I'm not suggesting we do the full $1.4 million, but I'm saying we need to have a really clear idea of two things. How we want to spend our ARPA funds, and what projects we want, and how we're going to prioritize that. And two, how much do we want to commit to broadband, improving broadband in our community through whichever sources, and how long of a time period we want to do that work. And so, to date, we don't have decisions on either of those. And so we're in a kind of a hard situation where, we're taking a shot in the dark in terms of how much do we want to commit. I mean, and that's where hearing what other townships within the county are thinking about. I mean, if everyone is throwing in 100%, we would want strong justification on not throwing in 100%.
But everybody's 100% different from what our 100% is. That's my problem I have.
But if you look at the numbers, we're also the largest community within, by far, within the eastern block of Open. And so all the monies are scaled to that size, right?
Second highest taxable value community there is in this county, including cities, villages, and everything. They provide, what that means is they provide more taxable value to the county anyway. So along with that, I think, I don't know I get what you're saying.
No, and I think building off of that point, I think it's, one thing that's absent from this is how is the county using its ARPA funds?
Thank you, that's where I'm going with this.
And so buying a paper folding machine for $100,000 may be a legitimate use of the money. It doesn't fly with me, but I don't know what their business operations are up there. So, but they've got $14 million. We know they've spent 1.2 on business relief. And some of those businesses are interesting. So, but I'm not making the decisions there, and I don't monitor, the full set of conversations, so I'm not in a place to say if they're using their money legitimately. But we would like I would hope that we would have a clear understanding of how they're going to leverage and how much they're going to leverage to this effort, or if it's just going to be the ARPA funds contributed by the constituent townships that will fund this effort.
Does anybody know that the township have a presence in this thing, or is there broadband? Or is it established over there? Jason, I mean, you've been to all these meetings, you don't know something about that.
I've not been to all these meetings. So I think, I'm just gonna go back to that report, because there is, they do have the various service areas.
I think they're considered to have sufficient access and options.
No, that's what.
So, but yes. Yeah.
What does that mean?
That means that they're not served.
That means they're not
So
into it.
what, my understanding, and that may not, this may not be fully accurate, is that they were part of a cable build-out a number of years ago, which provided them higher speed access, which means that they have, quote, adequate existing cable services. Because the county is looking for a fiber-only option, they'll eventually be looped into this, but not only after we meet the needs in the areas that are classified as no coverage or community coverage, whatever their terminology is.
On slide 8 of the presentation, Steve, it says DeWitt and St. John's have sufficient access and options.
And that's the city, right? What city? Yeah.
So I think, thank you, I think what led me to believe that it was competitive is that I noted several times that more users, more homes, more competition. And then I had Riley and Olive is in the middle of where providers want to be. They're the worst served, and they are the area that leads to other markets. So it did feel to me very much like we were kind of competing for, and I know it's complex, but it felt to me like there would be, somebody like them, because they're where everybody wants to be and they're the worst served, they would be selected possibly before our service area.
So let me finish. So I started talking about the different types of grant opportunities that are out there and what they may fund. If under Guidehouse's guidance, this is not going to be a one and done type of initiative. We will more than likely apply for several different types of grants. The county will apply for several different types of grants. Some grants, the county may say, we're going to go for the entire county. Other grants may be restricted to just those areas that have no service or classified as no service. So they may parse off all those northern townships and say, we're applying on their behalf for this particular grant funds. Now,
Are those the 3 regions that they've chunked out in here?
So,
West, East, and Central?
so the east includes us, right?
Yes.
And so I would say that the north one, I'm going to see. The west. Yeah, the west is all red. I believe they are considered.
Lebanon, Essex, Greenwich, Westphalia, Westfield, and Eagle.
Yeah, it looks like Westphalia and Eagle are orange like us.
So, it would seem weird that they wouldn't go after a grant that's only service, say, those areas that would be considered red or unserved. So I don't know, not without knowing exactly what the different grant opportunities are, we can't say if we'll be competing. We may not be considered as part of one grant application, but we would as part of another grant application. And so, but the devil's in the details, so, and there's lots of different things that we need to consider. So even if we're funded by a grant, The question is, it's gonna take time for the internet service providers to build the infrastructure. So where do they start? Do they start going north and go south? Do they go south, go north? I mean, it depends on the service provider and where they have existing fiber build out. How much of the service is going to be provided? Are they building the trunk lines and then what's called the last mile? And so that would be the connections to the homes. Where's that going to be provided first versus later on in the project? So, I mean, all those types of details need to be hammered out. I mean, I think we're in a strong position with a lot of the work that we've done with the broadband committee to do advocacy on our own behalf. Again, part of that is having our survey data back. Part of that is one of the recommendations from that committee was to do an infrastructure audit, which is a necessary step for having a quote shovel-ready project. So there's lots of work to be done here, but I think our first steps here at the board are to make a decision. Do we want to play with the county? If yes, how much do we want to commit?
And do we want to give it all one shot or we can see?
My recommendation is, unless there is economies of scale that the county can, provide discounts with the internet service providers, that we would keep the money in-house and pay as we go. But I'm not the treasurer.
Okay, is there any other?
It's a treasurer's job.
Doesn't seem to be any other discussion.
Just hang on to it, you don't spend it.
So I guess, is there, from the board, is there additional information, specific information that you'd like to see before having to make a decision on this?
I have a question, Ryan, you asked about more money being put towards it. Is there limited, if you can just put ARPA funds towards it? Do you have an idea of some other money you'd like to make a bigger contribution than the total ARPA funds, or how much of the ARPA funds are you thinking?
I honestly had no thoughts. I just wanted to understand better if there was a reason that they were using ARPA funds, whether we wanted to use some of our fund balance dollars or some other pot of money that we had available to us. I just wanted to understand it. Is it a federal benefit to using your ARPA funds or a state benefit? But it sounds like it just seems to be the source that they know we all have at this moment.
I do know from the meeting that the supervisor of Victor Township, they anticipate having a decision at their meeting on, I believe, June 13th. So they'll be making their decision that evening. So we'll,
Their thing you said was, their thing they were going with over there, Jimmy was going with 360.
no, this is how much, that's how much they're getting in ARPA dollars.
Like,
When that's, are they
But
going?
that's not, that doesn't mean they're gonna,
They're not gonna contribute the whole thing.
we'll know on the 13th if they're in and how much they're in for. They may decide to give 100 or 150, I'm just talking, but they may decide to give some other amount than the whole amount.
Realistically, the number, what's the number, $12.6 million for bill cost? Is that what the number is?
For our service area, yes.
Is that just for our area?
It's 25.3 for all three areas.
For all three areas?
It's 12.6
6
for
million.
Yeah, 12.6.
East block.
Yeah. Victor Rose is that.
Now, again, the
And we don't-
majority of that would be covered by grant funds. There may be match dollars that are required for those funds. It may be engineering requirements that we have to spend, probably the infrastructure audit analysis might be ways in which we would spend our dollars.
The county doesn't give any information at all as far as what their commitment is.
not this time.
Are they having the conversation like we are?
According to Dave Pohl, they are.
So like when, at the end of this, we'll have like Clinton County and Bath Township and Victor Town, like we'll know what everyone is lining
We've
up.
been discussing this for a long time,
But I mean for this project specifically.
this project specifically, because they knew that's how it was gonna shake out.
But why are we being asked to do it in 2 weeks
I
then?
think the reason, because they've been working on it a long time, and now it's open for it.
But the county is not gonna work on this in 2 weeks?
I think the first round of submissions of the grants is August 1st.
Right,
But we won't know what the county is contributing before then?
oh, I'm sure, yeah.
I don't know when the last Tuesday of the
Just
month, I
ask.
think, is when they meet.
Just ask who?
Commissioners, just like hopefully somebody's gonna ask it, because the important thing for us, I think, anyway, from my own personal, from what Jason's saying and others are saying, is that, one, how important is this? We've always said this is crucial. Crucial means incredibly important. ARPA funds are only a one-time shot. So the question is, how crucial is broadband to this township with this one-time shot?
Well, I appreciate that question, but my other question is, is the county having the same conversation? And I'm getting mixed answers to that.
So I wonder if it makes sense with this conversation, if we can set up a meeting with the county, maybe add a committee to ask these direct questions.
With the chair, or with all of them, all seven, or?
No, I'd just add them.
Oh, okay, with our district.
I mean, it could be.
Just basically come
We
to
have two.
our board meeting, and have had the guy from Guildhouse, Adam, come to our board meeting, giving a presentation to us, but I'm guessing it's never gonna happen.
Well.
No, he
I
might.
don't know if
He,
he
I
would.
think he would.
He would.
Yes.
I think it'd be more effective to have we could do both. I still think it'd be really good to ask some very direct questions that wouldn't be behind closed doors, that might yield more direct answers.
Okay, what, the issue that you're gonna run into, which I think is really important, that you go to them and ask, and that they be told, that yes, we have been working on it, which they have been. So the question would be for them, because right now, we're gonna have two districts, which would combine into one at the election in August. So that's on top of this, in other words, that will be whole for the first time in a long time, 10 years.
Oh, not
And,
with the.
yeah, not the splitting
Thank
of
you.
Webster Road with,
I
you
wasn't
know,
sure, okay.
the east side
I
being,
understand what you're saying.
7 and the west side being 6. But that's what you have at this point, so I'm not sure, I don't know which way would be the better way to go. After
I'm
the
not-
election, you got two, which they're running against each other, two of our commissioners in that, they'll be running against each other for District 7. So, I don't know. Right now, this is an interesting time.
Can't we just ask the county administrator?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is there somebody else, either the chair or someone else that you can
So
bring in besides the commissioners?
at one of the first meetings, I did talk to Craig Longnecker, and I did
Yes.
ask about who would be the appropriate contact.
Okay.
He deferred to Adam Schmidt as
As
the
a-
contractor that is doing the work of this project.
So he speaks for them.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Then that's the answer.
There's no way he speaks for the county commission.
So he speaks for the project, not for the county.
Yeah, my question is, are they gonna have a non-binding letter in the packet just like we are?
And that's part of what Smitty should know, isn't it, or not?
My guess is that the county would be the fiduciary of the grant, and so they wouldn't have a letter of commitment. So, but it may be that there are some grant funds that are only available to ISPs, and so maybe the ISP, and then the county would have a letter of commitment that would have sub-letters of commitment. So depends on the funding source. I hear what you're saying in terms of what is.
We're being asked regardless of the funding source.
You're asking for the ARPA funds.
No, I'm asking if they're gonna be voting on a letter like we're being asked to do.
That's the commitment, whether you're gonna commit your ARPA funds or
Yes.
not. That's ARPA funds. So that would be the question with Smitty as to whether or not he speaks for the commissioners.
I'm gonna guess that's the contract with Guidehouse. There may be parameters in which, A, what the commitment to the Guidehouse contract is, and then two, in terms of the application process, what has the county committed to broadband overall, right?
Well, at some point, they have to have taken a vote, or they will take a vote. So somewhere on record, or to be on record, will be the results of this question. So that's my I think we asked the county administrator, is this on an agenda coming up? And what are you recommending? What do you think is going to happen? Or have you all voted on this? I think that's the key piece. Like, are they going to have a piece of paper like we are?
So,
We can find out.
so either Craig would be the one to ask, or Smitty, Mr. Smitty. I'm sorry.
I'm having a little trouble with the non-binding. Why didn't they ask for a letter of commitment towards this instead of a non-binding, which you can drop out of any time, or they can drop out of any time?
So I think the devil's in the details here. So they're not asking for a letter of commitment. They're asking for a letter of intent to commit. So that is why it's non-binding, because there's no detail. There's no fine details within it.
Well, if you take that letter and you take it up and put it in with all the other letters, and it says non-binding, why would they even pick us to do it?
I throw something in on that. Someone who does a non-binding, for the same reason we're sitting here discussing it, and we need to let them know by the end of June. Every township in this county is running into the exact same issue. So if you're non-binding, that means that we've talked about it, we've said this is what we want to commit, this is what we want to do. But it doesn't mean that our board is going to say that's 100%. If that's what I understand a non-binding.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that it's one of the ways in which you indicate to reviewers of a grant that's until the details are all worked out, we have entities and individuals who are interested in committing to this project, and here's a sense of how much they're going to commit. Could be I wouldn't want to do a binding one at this point because we don't know any of the details, and so it could be that it's a project that is going to commit way too much money for not enough service delivery, and we may say that's not a good deal for us, and we're going to pull out. But it all depends on what happens. The other thing is, say they apply, and never get any grant funds. And I think that was one of Steve's first questions of, are we left, having.
If that cost you $1.3 million, I'll say it for you.
Yes, thank you. I would have added way too many more words.
All right, is there any other discussion on this?
Are there more, so in addition to Ryan's request, are there more specific questions you'd like us to ask of the county or of Guidehouse?
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
On this letter, I'm going to recommend that we refer that to our attorney, so we get the language and stuff that we want, rather than use a generic letter from the county, so we know exactly what it means and what we're signing up for.
Non-binding.
It's non-binding.
No, that's what I mean.
But I want our legal staff.
Right, but it's a non-binding
Yeah,
contract.
yeah, but I want them to review the letter, because they'll be more specific, and that will put us in a better position long-term. That's just my recommendation.
with that, number 2.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. We'll go to 13B, for those who have your agenda, items of action. Special use permit.
So this was introduced at the last meeting. This is a just over a 15,000 square foot warehouse for the purpose of offices and commercial storage. Brought to the township by Summit Holding Group, which their representative from that organization couldn't be here tonight because he's feeling a little bit under the weather, but their contractor, Mallory Building, is here to answer any of you guys' questions. You'll see on the last page of the staff report, there were a couple conditions that came with this development from the Planning Commission. Mallory Building and Summit have already been working to fulfill some of those conditions, so a photometric plan has been submitted. It hasn't been sent to the township engineer, but will be sent to the township engineer for review, pending whatever the outcome of this SUP is. And we've also, after this staff report was put together, gotten updated comments from the County Drain Commission stating that after further review from their plans, they approve of the drainage as presented, with a couple of stipulations that Mallory Building will have to follow up on. So just to ensure that all their development standards are met. So I'll go ahead.
May
Oh, I'm
I?
sorry.
At the planning commission, did, Mr., is it Jakovic?
Yeah.
Did he agree to the proposed conditions of approval?
Yeah, they've been very, very accepting of all the conditions, and
Okay.
like I say, they've even started to work through some of those,
Okay.
just to move things along.
Thank you.
If it's okay with you, I can turn it over for questions, or?
No, the only thing I had is, as long as, you and I have talked before about this, as long as those conditions are being followed, and it sounds like they are, then I don't see if that's what you agree with, it should be good.
Yeah,
When do they plan to break ground?
it's a good question.
As soon as we get approval.
We would like anybody else. Okay. That is an item for action. Oh, go ahead.
Quick question. So what was the intended use for the
So,
space?
Even though it's being brought by Summit Holding Group, there was initially, when we saw who was bringing the development, we were a little curious about the use, but we requested a letter from them for the intended land use sign. And it is for office space or commercial storage.
Office space or commercial storage?
Yeah, so it's kind of just a large warehouse, kind of a white box.
Okay.
I think it's divided into 4 quadrants.
Yeah. And if I remember correctly, there was if the use changes, intended use changes, they'd have to update.
They'd have to come back to this body and amend the site, or the special use permit, which they've signed, that was also on the letter.
Any other questions? I think we're ready to take this is an item for action. So ready for vote?
Need a motion.
I know.
Move approval of the Summit Holding Group Commercial Development Special Use Permit with the provisions as provided to us tonight.
Second.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Bensy?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Dios-Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that motion apparently passed.
Thank you.
Take care. Start work.
Yes.
Okay, with B, small letter B, addition of text and amendment fees to the Bath Charter Township fee schedule. Do that again, never sit down.
So this one is a little bit simpler. So we've had a couple situations that have come up recently where we've been talking to applicants about, the nature of these specific proposals. We haven't received any applications for these yet, but they could require seeking a text amendment to do what they'd like to do. One such scenario is there's a property that's looking to do a land division, and there is a cell phone tower on one of those, on the parent parcel. And as they break out the child parcels, our current cell phone tower fall radius would prevent them from, they would break out parcels that would virtually be unbuildable. So they could seek a variance from that to seek relief, or they could apply to bring a text amendment to the planning commission. So going down kind of that rabbit hole with that individual, we realized that I don't think we have any fee on the book for a text amendment. It's gonna take quite a bit of staff time. I would say about 6 to 8 hours of my time. Bert would have to be involved, Beth's gonna have to be involved. The planning commission will have to be involved at least one meeting, probably more likely 2 or 3. So it does bear a little bit of cost to the township. I mean, just our noticing requirements alone to the paper will bring additional costs. So after kind of looking what other municipalities in the greater Lansing area are charging for these types of services, I think we got to about $250 for kind of a baseline of where we should probably charge for something like this.
So is this retroactive or is this moving forward? In other words, they haven't come yet for that, but you're assuming they will only because actually they're gonna have to.
We're in talks, yeah, we're in talks. We haven't received an application, but they've kind of poked around with the township to see what they can do and what they can't do. And there's a number of that was just one example. I mean, there's a number of situations where this could come up in the future. It's definitely something that I would recommend be on the fee schedule. The exact dollar amount, obviously, is for this body to decide. That's just 250 was a recommendation.
Is that the only change to the schedule now?
It's the only change.
That's only the one change?
Yeah.
So
Try-
you put them all on here for
Yeah,
informational purposes.
yeah,
So it's an update.
it's an update.
Miles, how does a text amendment differ from an amendment to say like a special use permit?
So a special use permit, like that gentleman that just came in, is, I know what it is, but it's hard to explain. So we're giving you, this body is granting that applicant the ability, the permit to go do what they want to do with that land use. Now, if that land use changes or something fundamentally changes about that land use, then they would have to amend that permit. Where this, a text amendment, is amending our zoning ordinance itself.
Thank you.
Where usually amendments to the zoning ordinance are brought by the planning commission. They would request, hey, you know, there's something wrong with this ordinance, we need to look at this. But in this case, it's, you know, a member of the community that'd be bringing it.
Is that the only reason that you come to the board as opposed to the planning commission?
Zoning amendments to the ordinance go to the planning commission, and then they get recommended for approval at the board.
One other question related to that. Say that the requested text amendment is a benefit to the overall community, and it's not for a special single off. I mean, would that fee still apply?
It would still apply because likely if somebody's requesting a text amendment, they're requesting it because it somehow affects them in a way they see as unfair or negative. But in the case, the example of the cell phone tower, so when that language was written, I think that was earlier in when cell phone towers were kind of the new thing and they were being installed and there was an abundance of caution around them. So I think ours was, the fall radius of the cell phone tower is 3 times the height of the tower itself. Now, no longer is that the common standard. So I think it would benefit the community as a whole to get more in line with what the updated standards are. But it's gonna be, there's a large financial benefit to this applicant for getting this language changed.
Let's explore this a little bit. What if, say, a nonprofit agency were to come in and advocate for a change to our use by right ordinance to allow bees in our, beekeeping in our, high density residential. We would charge that nonprofit $250.
No, I guess I would advocate Karen's got her hand raised, but I would just advocate that they would come during public comment to the planning commission. The planning commission could direct that to be taken up. But since this one is so directly affects this individual, and we haven't had any other issues with this ordinance, and likely probably will not, this is a rare case where I would say a text amendment is probably the route to go. And he's more likely to be successful with a text amendment than he will with a variance.
So in the past, I have waived fees after speaking with the planning commission chair. At the time, it was a site use, it was a minor amendment, and instead of having the developer pay the fee, we both agreed that it should be waived because it was it looked like part of the intent of the original SUP. So we have the ability to waive those, and if it was something like that, I would.
I'm just listening to what you're saying.
No, I'm saying like I would, but it would be after consultation with Bert and the planning commissioner, the chair of the planning commission with Miles. I would not just waive fees.
Quit crossing my legs. An ordinance is a law, correct?
So local law.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can sidestep a law? I mean, I'm trying to understand.
This is a
What-
fee, this is a fee schedule.
That's correct.
That
It is a law,
supplements.
and that's
That
different.
supplements.
So this is not an ordinance.
No,
Fee
this is
schedule
a,
is
this
not
is
an
a fee
ordinance.
schedule.
Okay.
That
which is not an
accompanies,
ordinance.
it accompanies the ordinance.
So I guess I'm questioning whether, again, you can sidestep the fee for an ordinance that someone has to come to as a law. I'm trying to figure that out. Any thoughts? Yeah.
I have lots of thoughts. So.
You always have lots of thoughts, go ahead.
So when ordinances are being written, oftentimes they're being written for specific cases or specific situations or, common issues that are being done. And oftentimes, but we also know that you don't always get the ordinance correct on the first try, meaning some new situation comes up. And so you try to build in some flexibility, and then the whole reason we have the zoning board of appeals is to offer more flexibility for very specific cases. And so I think this is just one of our tools in the toolbox to provide that flexibility for our community related to our set of ordinances.
No, I understand the tools in the toolbox, but I'm questioning about throwing the tools out. That's what I guess I'm trying to struggle with. So that's something that obviously can't be decided here. That's my own thought, is that when you have an ordinance, when you have a fee schedule that's attached to that ordinance, that means that you can make an arbitrary decision as to whether or not that fee is waived. Instead of, so why
So
are
I-
we here voting?
So I think there's two things here. One is, the tools in the planning department and on the planning commission are useful. They would review the text amendment process, right? And so we would lean on them to make sure that this was done in a professional and fair way. Now, the waiving of fees, I'm glad to hear that there's flexibility. I do also think having somewhere written, here's what the parameters, in which case.
It's in here.
It's in there?
Yeah.
That's,
Exceptions. Any and all fees set forth in this resolution may be altered or waived by the Bath Township Board of Trustees upon written application, blah, blah, blah.
okay,
Well,
by the Board
okay,
of
so,
Trustees. That's,
because there's
no.
that, but then, say, I do think that there's an ethical thing here where if two people want text amendments, those two people feel strongly that their two text amendments are of larger community benefit. One is given a waiver of the fee and the other is not. There's a case there to be sued for the $250, which I don't think would happen, but I think just to ensure the fair application of the waiver, having some criteria established by which the waiver could be issued just to cover ourselves from liability. I don't know if that's something that we have to figure out today, but I think just in the future, that would be one thing that would add to the professionalism of this work.
Then why have it?
Right. But
Fee schedule. Shoot.
We have a fee here for one simple reason, we already discussed that in the first open statement, it's here to cover the hours of work and the time and the cost of staff members.
That's
If
correct.
they can perform their job, and be able to, they can do this
But we're gonna waive that.
and be compensated for that.
I've waived one fee in 3 years.
That's the way, you really got off schedule here, and I took a nap for 10 minutes. And then I woke back up and I realized we're still on the same original question. But the question is whether we want to have a fee schedule for text amendments. That's what the question is here.
The question
And that's what
is-
you're asking for here, and not what somebody did in the past, or whether they did or didn't.
The question, no, the real question is, you've got your fees, but you
You wanna
have
add
the
another-
option
You wanna
to,
add another fee to it, to the text amendment, that they think to cover the cost of the planner, the planning staff, the zoning administrator, the township administrator, and whomever else it touches, so we get paid for the services we're providing.
But if you
As
waive
far,
that,
as
you
far
don't
as,
pay.
as far as waiving fees and everything, I think that's a whole nother conversation for a later point
That's
in
correct.
time. Because I legally think you're all wrong. I don't think there's a person in this place that can waive a fee other than myself, but I may be wrong, that their contract may say that. I don't waive fees as a very seldom, as most people will complain, I stick to it. But that's not what we're here for. We're here for this article to move this thing along, is for the text amendment to be able to charge a fee for that process. I'm not scolding us, I just
oh,
think,
no, I understand
I think
exactly.
that's where we're at with this.
You're absolutely correct. When it came up that there's an access to waiving it, that's when the question came up. But you're right. Go ahead.
I move approval of the Bath Charter Township fee schedule with the changes presented.
Second.
And that- the change was the update.
Yep, $250 text amendment fee.
Okay.
Ms. Howe?
Why do you have to go me first? Steve is correct, we're just talking about that, the waiving of it is a whole new,
Because it's a whole different story.
it is a different story.
It is.
And it's already in writing that it comes to the board, so, yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Bensy?
Yes,
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Funes-Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes.
Okay, our next one, hopefully will not be, don't take a nap.
I'm sorry, I
So,
shouldn't have
no,
said that. That was inappropriate.
It was not appropriate.
I see
Okay.
people dotting off in the audience.
Well, I thought you were the one who took the nap.
I did. I keep my eyes on one
Okay.
thing.
13C. We're gonna have the, I think that's the one with the agreements for improvements. Superintendent Hildebrand.
Thank you. This first agreement is for Bath Township's share, 70% of the engineering services.
Thanks, Miles.
Thank you, Max. For the Webster Road, Safe Routes to School and TAP grant, which amounts to $133,048, and that includes a 10% contingency.
Sure. Okay, 133. And that's all we're looking at to approve at this point.
That's
And
the first of
the-
three.
Yes,
three
it's the first of
agreements, yeah.
three. And those dollars come from 400,000.
They come from our general fund budget.
Oh, not the road commission?
The
Yeah.
road commission's share is 30%, which is
Right.
$57,021.
Which they have left. After all,
This
I
is
think
for
she's
2024.
asking about the road committee, not the road commission.
This is for 2024's budget. So that number may not be 400,000 that year. I don't know what it'll be that year, but it's for 2024.
But the road budget is part of the general fund budget.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, yes. Yes, oh, why? Did you call me? Okay, go ahead.
We need a motion.
Ryan, you can make a motion.
I can, would you like me to?
Yes, I would.
I move approval of the agreement for improvements on Clinton County roads for the amount of $133,048 as presented.
Second.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Bensy?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Funes-Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Hall?
Yes. Okay. 13D then takes in the second one that you talked about.
Yes, so this is for construction in 2024. This takes in the grant funding of almost $1 million. You'll see on the top line, $984,065. Bath Township's construction share, which also includes a 10% contingency of, and that's a total for us of $366,516. And then Clinton County's construction share is $112,953. And this is for construction to take place in 2024 for Webster Road, Safe Routes to School, and the TAP grant, which is a sidewalk on the east side of Webster Road.
So if we commit to this tonight, that $366,000 will have to show up in our budget, whether it's
That's correct.
added to other things or not, but that is the minimum. Thank you.
For
Well,
that, for
for
that
that.
project.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, for that. That also means if you're not, if the grant doesn't go through, which was in the early, that's the almost $1 million. That. we
If
would
the grant
also be
doesn't go
responsible.
through, I'm going to assume that the project is not going to go through, but
Yes.
I could be incorrect.
Yeah, okay, that's. Okay, need a motion.
Can I make a statement? Incidentally, it'll be a short one.
Okay.
Incidentally, that's what we're asking for with the broadband, because they're looking for a commitment. The same thing as what they did here, and that's not to go backwards here, but that's so everybody realizes that. But we know that, but I mean, we hate to do things we don't know what we're doing. So I'm done, I'll shut up.
Anybody gonna make a motion? You can make a motion.
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
approve the total cost of the construction project for Bath Charter Township's construction share of $366,516 for 2024 road project.
Second.
Okay, you vote.
Mr. Bensy?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Funes-Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we're at 13E, the agreement for improvements of Clinton County Road, Drum Road.
Okay. So this is the last of the three, although this work would take place in this fiscal year, 2022. And this is for tree and stump removal and ditching drainage improvements along Drumheller Road of $30,000, which currently still exists in our budget.
The stump removal, that hasn't started yet, is what you're saying?
No.
No.
Okay. And we have stumps.
We have trees and we have stumps and things that are in the right of way that need to be cleaned up.
Okay.
And move to approve the expenditure of $30,000 for Drumheller Road improvements.
Second.
Mr. Bensy?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Funes-Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna be on, 13F, this is the payment for the cancer meeting. So, this was mine. What I put in for was for Ms. Kathy Aldridge, who had not been informed that the committee had been canceled. So she's looking for a payment because she planned her whole day to be here. And that was something that had to be questioned. That was the senior center. It had to be questioned. She was not told in August, apparently it had been canceled because there wasn't a quorum. In September, she did not get a call. So she came and waited for someone to be here, and she wasn't here because there wasn't a meeting, but she hadn't been called. So I'm asking for a policy and procedure. Well, I'm asking two things. One, that she be paid. And two, if you're looking for a policy and procedure addressing that issue. Right? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you raised your hand.
Oh, I'd love to talk about this one.
Then go right ahead.
What about the other people that were at that meeting that didn't get paid?
They didn't show because they were called and said they were.
No, you just didn't have a quorum.
Oh, well, they were called and said they didn't have a quorum.
No,
You didn't.
I did not get a
So
call.
you showed.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so did Judy Gardy. Karen was there at that meeting.
I can't recall. I have to go back and look.
So what you're saying is you're comparing when there's not a quorum to.
We've
when
never
they
paid
cancel
in the
things.
past.
I understand that.
And
Yeah.
if you're starting a new precedent here if you do this. I'm not saying it's wrong to pay her, but we've had meetings that people didn't show up, and we just went home.
Is
in
it
the
the
past.
chair? Okay, my question then would be, so it's the chair's responsibility to find out if there's a quorum. If they find out there's not a quorum, is it the chair's responsibility then to call?
It's your responsibility to call in and say
Okay.
you're not coming, and if you don't do that,
Okay.
they don't know it until the time of the meeting.
Okay, so if some call and say.
This is a hard meeting because it's at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yes, it is a hard meeting.
It's a different situation.
It is it
Was
just
it
a-
at that time? I don't recall.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's.
It was 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember. We were on Zoom.
I personally hate that this issue has come before the board. I hate that there has been email exchanges. I hate that there's been letters drafted. I came in last week, I made a $25 donation to the Senior Services Board budget for this person to get paid, because I think that she should get paid, because we did not clearly communicate what our expectations are. I don't think that we should change policies, whether, it doesn't sound like we have a written policy, but I think we just make it very clear that if a meeting doesn't get quorum, then sorry. You know, the $25 is not intended as payment for service. It's an honorarium for people's time. And so, this issue, I mean, the amount of staff and personnel time that has been committed to this is probably in excess of $1,000. So can we just make this go away? She would get the extra $25 or the payment that she's expecting. Do we need a policy for,
That's
this
the
is probably the
question.
first time this has come up before the board in 35 years. So I don't think it's an issue. But I do think that we can be more clear in terms of what a committee member's expectations are and what to expect for their service.
All right, because it hasn't come up in 35 years, we're assuming that the chairs have always done that. That's an assumption that we have, is that when it's been canceled, then your members are notified.
95% of the time when quorum isn't made, most people sigh a breath of relief and go home. And so I don't think it's an issue. I don't think do that for this meeting.
It's not a quorum. That's, yeah, I'm not true. It's not a quorum. And you're absolutely right. Yeah, I wish it would go away. But,
And it can go away.
oh,
She'll
sure,
get paid.
if we sweep it under the carpet, it can go
There's
away.
nothing swept. She will get the.
Is that what the
payment
board
she's
wants to do?
expected.
If that's what the board wants to do, then that's what the board wants to do. Yes, please.
So Al, you went to the meeting and there wasn't a quorum and you didn't get paid for it, as
Right.
others did not get
And
paid
Judy
for it.
Gardy didn't get paid.
So are we opening it up to paying her but not paying the other two?
No, everyone else had been notified. She
No,
had-
we weren't notified.
No, of the September meeting.
October meeting.
No, the September meeting was the one that she wasn't called, is what I'm understanding.
On
And
your
everybody else
note,
had been called and said, don't come because we're not gonna have a meeting.
on your note on our pad,
Okay,
it said October.
no,
It says September. It says August meeting did not have a quorum. Ms. Aldridge did not receive
No,
notification.
I gotta look at my
canceling
pad at
September.
home.
No, that's.
But
So,
I
and you're
remember the
right, it should
meeting.
go away.
And I remember that we still did some talking about what Judy wanted to talk about, and it took about 45 minutes.
Did you have quorum?
No,
No, we didn't. We still,
No
Judy
one
still.
was here. Okay, whatever this board wants to do, I'm with Jason. You know, that's,
And
shock,
then-
isn't it? That's why you're Steve. But
I never got paid for any meetings in the
a quorum
past.
wasn't the issue.
So
Yeah,
basically,
yeah, I
I
just-
understand that we're not only doing it without a quorum, but now we're paying people to do it without a
No,
quorum.
no, no.
No,
You
yeah.
don't understand.
Well, I understand
No.
100%, I'm elected around.
Everybody got called, but Ms. Aldridge.
I wasn't here
So,
last week.
whatever you want to do,
That
if
wouldn't
that's,
happen if I would've been here.
if that's the way you guys want to take care of it, that's okay. I'm only bringing to you what I've been told and what happened.
Yeah.
She was not called, there was not a quorum issue. She simply wasn't called. If she had come and there wasn't a quorum, somebody would have been here to say, don't come, there's not a quorum. That's not what happened. So I'm just, go ahead.
Maria, I really do appreciate you bringing this, attending to this, because we have a committee member who has a concern about being respected for her commitment. And so, and I'm gonna guess that there may have been other issues around communication with that particular committee, maybe not, but one way or the other, I think we're all on the same page. We don't wanna open up the can of worms of paying committee members for showing up to a meeting without quorums. But I also think that we're in a place where we can meet her expectations and move forward from there.
There was no quorum. Please understand, there was no quorum. She just didn't get the call that
And
the
that's
meeting had been
unfortunate.
canceled.
That's-
So, yes, it was unfortunate. So all I'm saying is, if someone in our committee members are very wonderful and they volunteer, and all I'm saying is, when this came to my attention, it was like, it's not making any sense to me. If they're not called, and your day is planned to be there, and you're not called, and there's no one else there, there's an issue here. So the responsibility falls, and we don't have a policy and procedure with regards to that. So that was the only reason for this. If you don't want to do a policy and procedure, I have no issue with that. That's up to you.
May I make an alternative suggestion? I think it would be a really nice gesture if you were to schedule a meeting with each of the committee chairs and have a conversation about what are the expectations, how do you communicate?
There's one committee chair.
No, there's one committee chair per committee, I'm
Oh,
assuming.
you're talking about all the committees.
Because I do have
Okay.
concerns about what's being communicated. I
I
know
think it would
Paula,
get written.
Paula Clark used to meet with committee chairs, and maybe that would be a good way to, and this could be a good topic of conversation.
No, that's okay. Okay.
But I think we have to remember that sometimes stuff happens and people don't get a call, they don't know to get a call, maybe there isn't quorum, I know that's not the situation here, but we can't, we're a committee or we're a culture of volunteers here, so we can't, there's gonna be no perfect setup, even if there's a procedure. What I don't think we should be doing is paying folks for meetings that don't happen.
Then that's fine. That's what your decision. Yeah.
No, that's not our decision.
It
We haven't
sure is.
voted yet.
Okay, do you want to take a vote? Then that's an item for action.
Not really.
Let's take it, then I'm sure you don't, but
So
that says item for action, so
I have a
yes, you need to vote.
suggestion. I suggest that the township does two things. I guess we do. I'll make a motion.
Good.
I motion that the township pay for 4 meetings, and then as an additional, you leverage the $25 donation to the Senior Services Advisory Board to provide an additional payment under some designation that is approved by the treasurer.
What's 4 payments? I don't even, I
I'm
didn't.
sorry.
My understanding is that there was an expectation of 5 payments, but the count came in out to 4.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, that's, okay.
Brenda, what's these people say?
It's $20 per person, and it's 25 for last year.
Oh,
It was $20 per member, and then it was
Okay.
$25 per secretary and chair. Because it was still 2021.
Was this lady, she is the secretary of the chair,
She's the secretary.
she is the secretary.
yeah.
So,
All we need is a vote on whether or not we want to accept.
You can't, you can't, I'm not gonna let you do this. You
Okay.
can't leverage money that's been donated from a revenue line item to an expense line item into this. Believe it or not, we're gonna have a perfect opinion on our audit next week. I talked to him today, and this isn't how it happens.
Can I undonate $25 and throw some cash in the envelope for a check?
If you wanna take and revisit the policy and procedure of committee pay, I'm all for it. And I'm gonna be the first one to tell you, I don't think personally that these people get overpaid for doing these things at all. So I think that it should be revisited anyhow, on how you wanna do it, and how you ought to structure it, and maybe you'll do what I hate, though, you can go check with these other townships and find out what they all do, because that's nothing to say they know what they're doing either. But
Okay.
I'm all for that, but you gotta be real careful, if you're gonna pay, if you're gonna make a payment here, you're gonna make it out of the budget, you got to amend your budget at the end of the year, Marie, because you don't have enough money in your line item to take and cover these costs, that's what you gotta do. But you can't go and take money from donation contingent, which is probably where that money went, hopefully. And expense line item.
Meaning that it's in the envelope still somewhere.
But you just can't do this stuff. We're accountable we're
Yes, we are.
transparent for what we do with public funds here.
That's correct.
But the people are public people who are working on these boards and committees, and I think they all deserve to be revisited and looked at in the way they get paid. I don't think we need to give the store away, but you know what I'm saying, that people work hard and people's time is worth something to show up and come. And whether or not they have a meeting or not, if they show up and come, maybe that's what you gotta look at. You need to look at this and put it on the agenda. I'm sure it'll be an interesting conversation.
You don't understand, there's no quorum. She just wasn't called.
Right, but
Okay.
I think you need to look at that
So
whole thing. But
that's
as
why
far
I-
as, if you want to take and pay people, you people can vote on that, and you can pay people, and you can make a motion to do that for what took place here. However, you're gonna pay them out of the expense line items. You're not gonna do a journal entry and a transfer and move money from place to place and draw a whole bunch of red flags as to why we're doing that. And then they ask questions, not to mention the fact that they do read the minutes of these meetings. And they actually, today, they look at the tapes. So, I mean, you gotta do.
It would
things
come out of
right
the township board, staff salaries. That's where they all come from.
here. Yep. But that's how you do that, but
You watch the tapes?
you're a
You watch the
great
tapes
guy
of the
for giving
treasurer
money,
just
Jason.
napping during meetings? Come on.
Can I ask one question? I know that Supervisor Howe offered to look at policies and procedures, and I'm unclear as to whether you would like her to look at this or staff to look at it. So I'm just throwing that out there for clarification, so we don't have two.
I think you and her will look at it together.
Well,
You opened it.
I opened it, absolutely. And I have no,
It'd be a good time for you guys to get together and talk about that stuff.
Okay, we can look at that.
Be good for you.
good for me. Oh, thank you.
I appreciate you doing it.
I'm sure you do. Karen, he appreciates you doing it, right?
Yep,
Okay. Good for me.
like the whole board does.
Oh, I'm sure they do. No, if that's what you want to do, that works for me. So, whatever it is for payment we're gonna make, we're gonna say no. Is that what you're saying? But with the fact that it's going to be visited or,
Well, I need to understand, because if I need to do a budget amendment or some type of, at the end of the
Budget.
second quarter,
yeah.
for that, then I need to understand
If a meeting has been canceled, that saves X amount of dollars. So I don't know that there's an amendment that needs to be done, but that's,
that. Well, the money that's allocated this year is for
Right.
2022 payments, so I would
You
be
gotta go back
comfortable
a
if there
year.
was a 2021
Yeah.
allocation to her because of because of these reasons.
well,
So-
again, you allocate X amount of dollars for each committee. We'll go through that. Whatever, however you and I will discuss it.
No, I mean, I need to understand if
I-
Kathy's getting it paid or not.
That's according to them, no.
Okay.
Right? Isn't that what,
I don't think anybody said yes or no.
then ready for a vote?
You gonna make a motion?
Huh?
Did you make a motion? No, you get the money.
Well, that's one way by deferring the fact that.
No, according to Steve, and what we've had in the past over the senior center, the money has to be accounted for. And so I don't believe you can give money to the senior center, but for a person at a meeting, I don't think you can do that.
I think that's clear.
No, I'm,
Can't make a donation in 2022 to a.
What?
fund happening in
2021?
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
what about if you pay your committees so much a year instead of so much a meeting?
Police
Wait a
and
minute,
fire board
that's
will
what
love it.
Can I
No.
get some semblance of order back to this?
That would be good.
I mean, you have,
It's apparent to
we
me
do that for
the
us.
motion-
Put on the table.
No, I
No.
withdraw the motion.
Okay.
It's apparent to me that we don't have the votes to do this tonight, so why don't you get together with Karen, as Lynn suggested, and see what you might work out
For a future policy.
for
For
future.
for future policy or payment?
Both.
Because, okay.
Talk about it. You have a meeting, you come up with anything you want. Bring it back to the board.
Oh, yeah,
Then
so you
the-
can sit there and say we can't do that because 2021 does, but,
Well-
okay.
So-
You can't fix anything you did in 2021
So, may I ask-
unless you do a 2022 budget.
Right.
And it has to be done in that way.
Yes.
Has Ms. Aldrich been paid some amount yet?
No, she is not.
So I don't want to delay the payments to Ms. Aldrich. I move that we do not compensate for the meeting. That lacked a quorum and she did not receive a phone call. I will ensure that she receives money that she is expecting within parameters acceptable to the treasurer.
That was the payroll, that comes from the payroll, comes from the administration office.
I'm gonna get my cash back.
You gotta understand how this works. This isn't a shoebox, and you don't go in there and you just keep money out of the box where you need it. I mean, it's gotta be done in a budgeted manner, it's gotta be paid by it, and if you're gonna make a payment out of township board, staff salaries, that's where this all comes from. This is all preset, it's all on the computer, folks. Their names are in there, all their tax information's in there, everything they want is in there. And when you punch their name in there, it comes up, and then their amount that they're getting paid, it comes out of there, and it comes out for this budgeted year, this fiscal year. We've already shut off, I did that before I left on vacation, thank God. We shut off 2021 because our audit's done and everything else is done. And payroll won't work after June 1st anyhow. But, for 22, it wouldn't work if you didn't shut 21 off. But anyhow, that's why this is so important, that's why we do this, that's why I made the statement, that's why we do budget amendments. Because that's the legal way in which you do this, because we legally amend our budget as needed for whatever, for a prior period adjustment or whatever, from a prior year in the current fiscal year. That's how this all works. The payroll gets done in the administrative administration office now, it's different. Years ago, we got done in the treasurer's office, years ago, and then it went to the clerk's office, but now we're a modern township, and it gets done by administration with HR, which is what HR comes out of the superintendent's office, and that's why that's set up that way, because that's the way it's supposed to be.
So she hasn't been paid for 2021, it's shut off.
But you can't pay anything out of 2021.
So we would pay her out in
So-
2022.
You can't pay
And
anything
there
out of
will be-
2021, you can't take anything out of a revenue line item that
So
Jason
all
has
committee
put money
members- all
into, and
committee
take it and
members-
turn it over, and put it paid out of it, make an expense out of it. It's
No, I
on a different
understand
side of the board there.
But what I'm asking is, so that means all committee members have been paid for 2021, because 2021's been shut off.
That's correct.
So she did have some money.
December,
She
in
could-
December, or all committee pays are paid in December each year.
Correct, yep, okay.
So what I would do is at the end of this month, when we did our first round of budget amendments, because we haven't done any to date, I would note that in the budget amendments, that we paid her that amount out of that fund for 2021
2021.
service.
That's,
If you're gonna pay.
Yes, if you're
That's-
prepared, yes.
but
So-
she said there hadn't been any.
No, but I'm saying, we'll pay, the scheduled, the 4 payments that we plan to make to her, for the 4 meetings, would come out of there. That would have happened anyways. We would have been note in there that said she was paid for 2021. So if you choose to give her 25, if you choose to give her 5 payments.
We need that bill.
I know.
We'll just,
So she's the only member that hasn't been paid.
correct.
Okay, that's, thank you.
At
That's
all for 21.
For
Correct.
21.
Yeah.
This is
Maria?
correct, because all the meetings
Correct.
you missed in
I hope
21,
you're
and she didn't
gonna
get
start
paid.
this.
Which is fine, you can do that in 2022, but the board has to agree to the budget amendment when you do it.
Yeah.
So you'll just,
Really,
have-
you
when
don't
it
even
comes
need
to
to make
that
a motion
time.
on it. You don't need to do it, you just need to do it, and then it's done.
Shoot, Ryan.
I move, we pay the committee woman her 4 payments that is due for
Okay.
2021,
It's okay, I didn't.
and we reject trustee Almarigi's donation via the donation policy that the township has.
We can look at the donation policy, but it can't be donated for the purpose we donated it for.
No, I'm advocating we reject the donation outright.
Advocating that no.
Oh, he might like to give it to the senior center.
So-
He can do whatever he wants with his cash. We should get it out of our books.
Assuming it's already in the books. But, yeah. All right.
If it
so-
came in, it's in the books.
Believe it or not, we got a pretty fiscally sound place here.
If
Look
it
at
came
other
in.
stuff. It-
It's in the books.
So, all right,
I'll second that. And then I'll call the question.
Oh, but when you, I have one question before you do that. What you're saying in this motion is you want the money to be funded back to trustee Jason Almarigi for the amount that he donated last week at some date.
The donation policy allows the township board to reject any donation, and I am advocating we reject his donation
You're exactly right.
respectfully.
You're exactly right.
can I ask that you amend that to not reject it, because I still want the money there, because apparently it won't ever be used for anything.
It has to be.
It's your call. You're just not gonna get the cash back to do whatever it is on the side you wanna do with it.
We donated correctly.
It was donated to the senior center.
Yeah, so that if he gets it back, he can redonate it.
I'm not gonna have you
However-
reject my donation on meeting minutes, so keep the damn money. I'll figure something else out, please.
All right. The donation issue was a whole different issue. That
Yeah.
wasn't brought in. The payment is the issue. So that's what the amendment should be, the motion.
Yeah, but didn't
No, I
Steve say-
understand, but the intention was that we would cut a check to Kathy on trustee Almarigi's behalf, and we can't do that. So if you're okay with the money staying there,
That's,
great. Then I withdraw my motion. I move we cut a check for Miss Kathy, I'm sorry, I don't have her name in front of me, for the 4 payments for the meetings that did occur.
I'll
You got it.
withdraw my second,
well, that was already
No.
determined.
No.
wasn't it? Okay.
No,
then I will resecond your amendment.
Steve, is this motion can we do this?
Sure.
No, I mean, you said a minute ago that it can just be paid out of the fund.
You're gonna pay it out of the fund, but in the same.
But does it have to have a motion?
Karen is going to take, and the superintendent is gonna bring forward a budget amendment to the, senior center advisory staff salary line item to be able to take, and not even that line item, to the Township board line item for staff salaries to take and amend to cover this cost. And this is $25 a meeting, so it's four, is it 125 for five, or is it four?
It's, she would receive, $100.
So it's $100, so it's four. And frankly, honestly, I wasn't in favor of doing any of this, because I think that some of well, it is. Some of this community service thing is just what it is. You serve the community, if you don't have a meeting, you have a meeting. But on the other side of the coin, this woman's been here, been to 4 meetings, and they all got canceled. She didn't get notified.
Just the
She
one.
attended 4 meetings that
But she only got,
we were holding this pending the 5th payment, a decision on the 5th payment.
This one is,
so she never received any money at all,
No.
only one.
that's what I said.
That's correct.
I think you two ought to get together, you ought to revisit the whole thing. I'll vote for it to clean it up, and I think that both the supervisors and the superintendent ought to get together, and you ought to revisit this, and you guys ought to figure this out.
I have no issue.
We don't come back again with this problem.
Right.
Okay.
You can't just move money around, guys, you know that.
Well, no, nobody's moving it around. All this is saying is, for this particular one, there was no quorum, so that's understood. Didn't have anything to do with quorum, it had everything to do with phone call that said, meeting's been canceled. That's all it was.
But you can't take money out of the revenue line item
Right.
to pay for this. This has to be paid for by the budget, and then you have to amend your budget, and then you take your loss.
I'll bring the amendments forward.
Yep. That's transparency.
And I call.
I have no problem with that.
Thank you. Please vote no, please.
Mr. Luigi?
Yes.
Mr. Funes-Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
I want to make sure I know what I'm voting for. After all that, I was voting for,
To make
In order to get paid.
four payments due from 2021.
well, the 4 payments she already, no. No, I'm still supporting the 1 payment when she wasn't called. So if you're supporting the 4, she already got,
No, she didn't get any.
Had any yet.
well, that's not anybody's, not her fault, it's not anybody's fault, but our payments. So,
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Bensy?
Yes.
okay. We're on item 14, new business. There doesn't seem to be items of introduction. B, there seems to be items for action. And superintendent or grant has to disposing of the remaining SCUMA funds.
Thank you. This is an item that Treasurer Wisswasser is also very familiar with. Each year, we are asked to, our preference as to what to do with our fund balance that is left over after SCUMA's funds are taken care of and their audit is closed. We've been notified there is $139,719.44 of our money that is sitting at SCUMA at this time, and they are asking what we would like to do with that. And in the past, we have received those funds back to the township and to either pay for, our, I believe, our own repairs, or possibly, if Treasurer Wisswasser could help me, maybe invest in them.
I would move to bring the existing fund balance from the Southern Clinton County Municipal Utility Authority back and to put into the revenue line item 590,000,671, which is your other revenue line item where it's typically always goes. We've always put it there as a revenue coming in. And as far as money getting utilized, if there's an issue at the end of the year where we need money for the sewer fund, that is what helps pay for some of the repairs and things, yes.
Second.
I have a question.
I don't know who did that first.
Everybody.
I know it's getting late for questions. Oh, who's got-
No, no.
oh, okay. If somebody else has one, please go. When you do that, it's $138,676. Would that be better earmarked to scuba,
Nope.
for the payment, okay, yes.
Because that's what it's from.
No,
It's
that's
from
what
your,
it's
it's
from.
from your leftover payments
That's
that you
correct.
have from the year, that you make your $89,000 a month you pay over there for your,
Yes.
for your sewage service fees. And that is left over from our budget, from budgeting, that they didn't use all of it, they always budget. It's very, I looked it up today, in 1920, you had 130,000, it runs pretty close. The only time it's ever been earmarked is back in the day when we did the last plant expansion, before they're doing the rebuild now. All 4 municipalities banded together,
Correct.
and we all took and agreed to put our monies forward in a special fund over there, and we left it over there, and we draw the higher rate of percentage of interest, and we paid the $750,000 to take and put the plant expansion on cash. And so we didn't have the bond for it, we had to do anything, things are different today, folks, so don't, you can't get things done today. $750,000 years ago paid, today it cost you $2 million to get kind of work on it that they did then.
But we're talking about bonding for scuba.
Yes.
So wouldn't that be,
This money will go back, and it'll go, this money will go back into your sewer fund, your enterprise fund, your 590 fund, and it'll go in there, and it'll look good for the purpose of bonding. When you get ready to bond later in the year here, they'll look at that, and they'll say, you got $139,000 is coming back, it's here, and you put that into your sewer fund, it's revenue you've taken in.
so
this
yours
year.
earmarked?
That's correct.
Okay, that's all so it is earmarked, that's all I wanted. That's all I was asking, thank you. Yep, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
So, any other questions? No?
Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
Yes, as long as it's earmarked.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Amorigi?
Yes.
Okay. You already know. She's watching. You know.
Just taking a nap.
No, you can't fall asleep either.
Okay.
It just, that's only for treasurer. Okay, we're gonna introduce the first readings for our assault battery. So between the two of you, between our chief, our Webster Police Chief, and our superintendent.
Is there anybody that has any questions on them? I've kind of talked to just about everybody now, I think, so.
This is the one on assault and battery, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. Right, we need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we lump them all 4 together, so save a little time, and do B, C, D, and E.
The first 3 are ordinances, so I would recommend.
All right, and do the first 3, B, C, and D.
So we're talking, no, I would rather have it separate. But we have to go, we made a motion.
We gotta have a second, though. You don't have a second, it dies.
Okay. No, I'm looking for,
What's your reason for wanting separate?
well, what I'm not understanding the littering. That's an update, which that's not, and I know that was trying to explain that that's still new, that it doesn't say update, so that means it is something new, because it is an update.
Because anytime you change the ordinance, it has to
It's
be.
not, so
New.
my question then, with your littering, what was your dollar amount in 2021? Sorry, guys. Right?
The dollar amount
Yeah, we have
is,
to littering. In other words, what was our schedule? Because this is supposed to be changing the schedule. This is an ordinance, right? It's
it's
gonna
not,
update.
no. Littering's
Okay.
not changing the schedule. Littering changed the penalty because state law penalty changed for what littering. It used to be a 93-day misdemeanor, now it's
Okay.
only a civil infraction with fines and stuff like that. So
Okay.
all he did is take the state law penalty and take our old penalty out and put the new penalty
Put the
in.
new penalty in.
Yes,
Okay.
you have to do that.
So-
We just did this back about a year ago for trespassing.
Okay. And that's also done for the assault, and that's also done for retail fraud.
The assault and the retail fraud we've never had. We're just adding those 2. They're brand new.
Okay. So the only update we have of being able to take state law and put it into an ordinance, our law, into a local ordinance, is the littering, correct?
It's just updating the penalty of that
Yeah, okay.
ordinance, yes.
No, I got it.
The reason that the attorney wanted to add the simple assault and battery and the retail fraud is he already does them with the Township, he already does them with all the other jurisdictions that he does. We have never put them in. They're very simple things to do. It takes a little burden off the prosecutor's office. It also puts a little less, a little more local control in what we do with these things as a township. It's just like the other ones that we have, you know, for local ordinances. So just kind of updating things as we go, so.
Adding 2 new ones, but updating one. Just so that's.
Anytime a state law penalty changes, we will have to update that ordinance.
Well, understand. So we're adding for an ordinance, assault and battery, and we're adding an ordinance for retail fraud, but we're updating it.
They're all amendments, so
So,
Yes.
yes.
But
Nope. Oh, I'm sorry. I said, no, I don't have a question. You got a question?
is your motion still on the table, Al?
Yeah,
Is there a second?
no,
I'll second that motion.
thank you.
So
We're gonna
Brenda,
go 3.
you as the clerk
Please
said you did
say
not want them together, right?
I'm not sure if you can do ordinances together.
Ah,
Sure you-
Why, what's the difference?
Can you? Okay,
I don't know, you know,
and I don't know either.
I thought if they
Yeah.
all dealt with the same department in the sense of what these are, I would think that the.
Logic doesn't
the
always
old
come in.
Zoom
Do
thing.
you mind if we move separate?
I'll remove my second.
Thank
I'll
you.
move my motion.
I'm trying to get leaking over
All right, so we have a motion for,
We don't have a,
You don't have a motion.
I'll move introduction and first reading of ordinance 28.10 assault and battery as presented by the chief.
Second?
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
yes,
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
yes,
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Funes-Bliss?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll move introduction and first reading of ordinance 28.11 littering as presented by the chief.
Second?
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
yes,
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
yes,
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Funes-Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll move introduction and first reading of ordinance 28.12 retail fraud as provided by the chief.
Second?
Ms. Howe?
yes,
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
yes,
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Funes-Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes.
Can I make a statement? It makes it easier for the clerk for him to do the motion and me to do the second, to write this down. That's why I did that. It does, when you do the shorthand, you're doing, writing it down, she has to go back and read it.
no, she reviews the. Go ahead. You have a question?
No,
Oh, okay.
I'll move the resolution to establish a schedule of civil fines and the policies, procedures, and payment of fines as provided but not addressed by the chief tonight.
I can address anything you want.
No.
I will address real quick for Jason, if you don't mind. I looked that up on, because he was talking to me about the municipal code on the website. It is section 70, but in the bottom of it, it refers to ordinance number 50, 50.1, 50.2. So that's what we're amending, because our resolution to amend the fines and costs.
But within the same system, section 50 is.
It's section 50, now ordinance number 50.
Oh.
That's the difference between the two. It's, that municipal code is very, very confusing. Always has been. Yeah.
Will it now have the littering? The ordinance, this schedule for civil fines?
No,
After
that's
second
total separate
reading,
from,
everything's
this
all
is
set.
just updating our parking fines and
Yes.
costs. Fines for what they're charged for because they're from
That's why I
2004.
had trouble finding.
We need to write new books because we're out of them, so we need to update them.
Yep.
The other part that was added in there was a policy and procedure to allow for indigent people to be able to be set up on payment schedules, but the county is going to handle that. If it comes in and they want that, they are going to handle that part of that. That's in
payment schedules as opposed to,
It's just a policy. It's all just a policy.
did that answer your question?
My
Need a
call
motion?
question, please.
Pardon?
Just a, we're having a discussion that I can hold.
No, as I said, it's an emotion.
Yeah,
Motion.
Okay.
Ryan and
I made
then
the motion.
Steve.
Is there a second?
Steve.
Second.
Okay, so take a vote.
Mr. Wisswasser?
Yes.
Mr. Benzi?
Yes.
Mr. Almarigi?
Yes.
Mr. Diaz Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes, Ms. Howe?
Yes.
Thank you, Chief.
Did you get overtime for that? Number 15, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Supervisor Howe. So staff has been in the midst of changing a lot of courses. Elections are coming, as you know, and we are working with the clerk to ensure that our processes are clean and that the ladies out front are working towards the elections every single day. In the past, there's been times where we would allow voter, absentee voter ballots. We would let those pile up and then we would do the work on them all at one time. But we've determined it's better for everyone to work as we go. So she's also been working on training for her staff, the whole front staff, front counter staff, I should say, and herself, as well as election inspectors. She's been obtaining training for them, and then we will work to have in-house trainings as well. And then we will be working to get precincts ready at that time and shifting equipment around for her. So there's a lot that goes into elections. There will be a lot that will go into, Treasurer Wisswasser will be sending out a new tax bill. Any and all support he needs will be given to him through our staff or printing resources. So we will help him as well if he needs anything. We've had several staff members. I kind of attribute it to the not wearing masks anymore. People are dealing with more sinuses and allergies, so we're doing a lot of testing here on staff to make sure people don't have COVID or they aren't exposing other people to COVID. So we've had a couple of cases, and myself and the department head determined the proper way forward with those people and when they can return to the office and if they're still wearing masks. So we're just trying to keep everyone safe as we move forward. I would also offer that if our code of municipal ordinances wasn't complicated enough, we're about to codify and add the last 3 years, I'll go back to October 2018. Surprisingly enough, Municode wasn't equipped to accept all of our ordinances all at once together in a very large file, so we've had to separate the ordinances and are transporting those through a different means so that they can get to work in codifying those ordinances. After that work is complete, there's often an insert that comes back to us, and anyone with an ordinance book has to have their book updated, and staff usually does those as well. So if there's any books, if you have one in your office, we'll need that upon completion so that we can update your book. And then, of course, we make sure that, yes,
Okay.
well, when you get it back, it'll be all updated. And then the clerk keeps a master copy so that there's always one clean master version in the vault. And then in the past, several planning commission members, the building office, and then several of the zoning board of appeals members all have those. So those all need to be updated, and it seems like it would be a minor undertaking, but when you have 4 years of ordinances, it's a lot. So we'll have staff working on that as well. Becca Slocum, our new recreation coordinator, is doing a fantastic job. She's held coaches meetings for T-ball and Little Sluggers. It seems to be helping that she is a known member of this community. If she doesn't know someone, she knows many people that she's sitting at the table with, and she seems to be having a very successful opening up the market, the farmer's market as well. I believe that we had 6 to 8. I can't recall the specific number. I think we put it in the Friday report last week. But she is having successful farmers markets, and it's exciting to see those happening again. COVID impacted those obviously as well. So it's great to have people outdoors. It's great to have the products, and it's great to have people socializing again in a safe manner. So it's all very exciting. Park Lake has been sprayed for noxious weeds. That'll be one of many sprayings that will continue throughout the summer, and we post the public areas that are ours, such as the beach and the boat launch. If there is an advisory, such as you shouldn't swim for 24 hours, it's noted there on the signs. So we've been working with Steve Hansen of PLM, it's Lake Management, to make sure that it's clear for people that they shouldn't swim at that time. I am told that there are 2 adult geese and potentially 5 baby geese that have been visiting the area down at the beach. That is a much different number than we had last year. So we hope that as the water testing, I'm going to reach out to Charity Little from the Mid-Michigan District Health Department to see when she'll start testing the beach water, but I'm hoping that the amount of geese significantly helps us this year in being able to keep our beach open and safe for everyone to use. And then I believe once Dan Hayes is able to return to meetings at the Park Lake Advisory Board, we will be looking at a banning of feeding of the geese ordinance at that time. So that will be coming from them with a recommendation up to you for your review and possible action. It's another step in us trying to eliminate the problem that we're having. But we were very successful, I think, with the utilization of goose busters. Always fun to say as well, and having 7, I guess, instead of 50 is a huge difference. So our efforts definitely worked this year. So if there are any questions for me, I'd be happy to take them.
Doesn't seem to be.
Okay, thank you.
Number 16 is going to be public statements, and this will be for anyone or anything. You have that look on your face, I know. So go right ahead.
Yes, at the senior center.
We need a name.
Last week I got an email in regards to,
You just
Yeah,
state
give
your
your
name
name
for
and
us.
address.
Ron Whitaker, excuse me.
Thank you.
I got an email saying that there would be, we would no longer be playing with money, playing euchre in the senior center. And I just thought, okay, fine, play without money. Well, there's only 3 of us that showed up today to play euchre. So we either need to send out another email saying these are the terms for playing euchre, or lost my train of thought. But apparently we need a little more clarification on what the terms are for playing.
Okay.
And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Is there anyone else? All right. Board member comments, number 17. Ryan, let's start on your end.
Happy Pride Month to the township. Excited to see some celebrations around the region. I wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Gruba, who we did not appoint today to the Board of Review. Thank you for putting in an application and wanting to serve the community. I noticed he also indicated the Planning Commission was an option, and there is a vacancy on that committee too. And then I got my absentee application today, so thanks to Brenda and her team, and excited to not have to fight the lines and be able to vote from my home. Thanks.
Trustee
Yes,
Vance?
I turned mine in today. And thank you all for coming.
I'll just let you know that I sent about 3,400 permanent AV applications out. They went out on Friday. We are going to sometime this week, which will be mailed out this week or next week. Everybody will get a new voter ID card, so that will be coming in the mail also.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, we send those out. We're required to send them out every 10 years, right after the census is done.
None of the precincts in Bath changed though, right?
None of the precincts in Bath changed. We still have the 5. The county commissioners
Mhm.
changed. The line changed
Thanks.
on that.
They're not, because I'm going to vote. Both places, that would be- Okay. For me, thank you for coming. That's the very first thing. I see some of our women here from the senior center, which is very nice, and others who've come, so that the chief, of course, for the chief, for coming. I also want to shout out here, I reached out to Shannon Proctor, who is the assistant for our school board for Bath, and she was telling me that the girls' soccer team went to the district. So I don't know, that was in May, the end of May 26th, so hopefully something's happened. I'm not aware of that. But she also wanted to give me the track qualifiers for state. And that would be Brandon Ullman for the long jump, and Colin Hagerman. He also received for 300 hurdles, and Hudson Maddox, who's a shot put. These are state qualifiers. And Dustin McDaniels for long shot, or long jump is what it is. So my congratulations, and I'm sure this board's the same thing. They worked all season to finally end up where they ended up with state qualifications, which is very cool. So Bath is doing incredibly well. So again, thank you all for coming, and shout out to these kids. They've really done a great job.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, nothing.
Or nothing, or
Thank you for coming. Nice to see everybody.
First want to apologize to the treasurer's office for my wayward donation and not understanding the intricacies of the flow of money back and forth. So sorry, I did not mean to set a situation up where there would be red flags. all over
Never
the
would
place.
have got it, you would have said it.
Glad I said something. The other thing that I'd like to say is, I want to apologize to Kathy Aldrich for this conversation. I know this is centered around one person. There's a larger issue here, but we very much appreciate every committee members taking their personal time to more or less donate to the township and how we can better serve the needs of our citizens. And so I also apologize for our not being clear in our expectations. While we did a vote that is against her wishes, I hope that we can find a way to better meet them. And then finally, I appreciate her service as Secretary to the Senior Services Advisory Board. That's it.
officially adjourned.
I move the meeting be adjourned.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Second.
I do this all the time.
Mr. Benzi? Mr. Almaridgi?
Yes.
Mr. Funes-Bliss? Mr. Funes-Bliss?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler-Challenger, yes. Ms. Howe?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Whistle?
Yes.
Thank you.
Smack it again, there you go. Unanimous consent, they voted, so there you go.
I want to kill some time. I just want to get it move fast. And a lot of times we used to.
Okay,
Always
and
put a
then
bunch of stuff together.
I'll look into it.
Yeah, but I'm not upset about it. I just wanted to help move it on.
I just didn't want to do it because it's not supposed to do it. But I'll research it, then I'll know in the future.
Okay. No, I just wanted to help you out. Me too.
Sorry.
Here, I tell you what you do. There's your phone there. Oh, that's your car thing. I haven't got my phone. I was gonna have you call. I was gonna call it.
It must be in the car because my watch is picking it up.
Oh. Okay.